Okay, today we're doing a 3.5 inch rough country lift on this 2016 JKU Sport. Should be fun, and it's Red Friday, so all good. All right, let's get this thing up and let's get started. Alright, so I've loosened all the lug nuts, and it's got wheel locks on each one, so I undid the wheel lock as well. So now my next step from experience is, in my process, you guys might do something differently. I'm going to disconnect the front drive shaft. That way, when I lift the frame, the drive shaft doesn't droop with the axle and put pressure on the crossover pipe that I'm going to have to extend later. So, doing the metal cloak lift last week, and it was easy just to disconnect the 4 bolts of the drive shaft, pull the drive shaft up, then there's no pressure on the exhaust, carry on easily. And well, it's a 15mm socket to get the drive shaft bolts off in the front. I'm marking the drive shaft because you want to put it back in the exact same spot. They're a little tight because they're held Loctite, thread blocker. Because it's so low, I had to jack the front, then set the back, then rejack the front. Not going anywhere. This side. Okay, that's a better view. So we got the shocks, we got the sway links, and we got the track bar disconnected. Now we can move on to the next step. Before we go on, there's a 10mm bolt on the spring pad that I'm going to disconnect, because what that does is it holds the brake line and ABS line from moving, and what that also does is it's going to restrict. So when I drop this axle down to take the springs out, the ABS and brake line are going to get very tight, and I don't want that. So this will allow them to hang free and give me enough room to work. There's one 10mm bolt on the side of the spring seat, holds the bracket. Take that off, pop that bracket out, and you got free range of movement. I'll bring you over and show you what I'm talking about. So that's the bracket we're talking about right there. Right here, it sits down in there with that bolt right here. So I just disconnected it, set it up there. You got plenty of room to drop the axle down and remove the spring. I'm just going to repeat that process on the other side. So that's that taken care of. Alright, so we're going to be putting lower control arm brackets, drop brackets on this lift. So first step is to remove some heat shielding that is on the control arm, on the upper control arm. Right here. We have this 10mm bolt right there, and there's another 10mm bolt on the top. That heat shielding will not be used again. And it's also over on this side too. So we'll be moving that heat shielding and lowering that end of the control arm and this end of the control arm using a supplied bracket with the kit. Let's get on with that. The top bolt is a little fun to get to, but thankfully, again, ratcheting wrenches are awesome. Hopefully there's only one holding it on up here, but we'll see. Yep, this too. That's that. Same thing. I say it's nice to work on new, clean vehicles, but and he lives on a dirt road. There's a lot of sand up in here. I haven't got hit in the face with anything yet, so it's all good. That's the heat shielding taken off. Now in some of the older models, they read like mine. This bolt right here, on the control arm is butted right up against the exhaust, so you may have to cut that if you're putting this list on a 2007 to 2011. But since this is a newer Jeep, they have redesigned the exhaust because it's a different engine as well. So it's easy, you can get to all the bolts, not a big deal. So next we're gonna loosen the control arm bolts. Alright, so we are gonna loosen the upper control arm bolt, which has a capture nut or capture mechanism on the other side. I'll show you that when I get it down. There's your capture device. This way. And we're going to loosen and remove the frame bolt, upper bolt. These are 18mm nuts and bolts. Lowers are larger. Sorry, my arm's in the way. Let's see. That's what I'm doing. Just moving that bolt. Alright. So I've got the control arm, upper control arm loose. I'm going to lower the axle a little bit. Alright, now it's out. Now I'll be able to take the backside one off. We'll be good. All right. Retain the hardware for both. All right, let's go to the other side. Okay, so we're gonna remove the lower control arm and try not to be in the way as I do it. Good luck. So it's a 21 millimeter bolt and nut on the lower control arm. A little bit of an extension over here. I get on that bolt. All right, that's that side. Loose. One more time just for the heck of it. Alright, so that's the lower control arm loose. I'm going to remove the bolt. With this kit, we're only retaining the axle side bolt. Fun stuff. So here's your inner control arm drop bracket. So we're going to put it together with this bolt that's supplied with a sleeve. It mounts right here. We just got to get the sleeve up in here and fit it all together. Always loads of fun. Alright, a little bit of sliding and pounding and cussing, and it's finally in. So that's that one. So next is the lower bracket, which is just a little bit off. I can already see. So let's go do some research. Okay, well this one is just as easy. Just as easy as just sliding this sleeve up in here, matching it with the holes, and then easy peasy, right? Should be a piece of cake, right? Sure. No, not in your life. So if you got a punch, it might make things a little bit easier. Not working out. So I got a punch. I'm trying to get everything all lined up in here. So I can slide the bolt through. It's a big old bolt too, so it's gonna have to be pretty centered. No, that helped. There you go. A little bit of prying, a little bit of pounding, and it's in. Okay, so we've got both bolts in. This bolt up here, yeah, had to turn it around, just so you know. The threads have to go inward, because this handy dandy plate with this groove right here, this groove goes right over the top of this mount. So it mounts up just like this over the top of the bolts. And there you have it. There's your drop control arm brackets. Let's crank them down and put the control arms on. Alright, so we're just cranking down these bolts to tighten up the bracket. So that's all we're doing. There's my 21 millimeter. Alright, so the bottom bolt is a 22 and the top is an 18. So and that's good and tight. Let's tighten up the rest of it. This nut up here is an 18. The bolt is a 19. So be aware of that. I'm going to hold it with an 18. I'm going to crank it with a 19 on the other side. Okay, that's good. Tight. All right, so the lower control arm bracket is tight. Drop bracket, lower control arm drop bracket is tight. Now we're going to use the supplied hardware, and we're going to put the upper control arm on at the frame. All right, so like I said, using the existing hardware, need to put this upper control arm back on, and then we're going to use supplied hardware. Alright, so installing the upper control arm is decided to be a pain, so it's in there, not a problem. Now I just gotta adjust the control arm back to line up with the holes, no big deal. And then we're going to put the lower control arm in right there with a supplied cam bolt and washers so that the alignment can be fine-tuned at the alignment shop. So the lower control arm on the bottom axle side was never removed, so we just gotta tighten it up once we put this together. So let's get that together. So I'm using the supplied bolts. I'm just gonna get this lined up and slide it right in there. Not a problem. Not too much force. All good. Flange nut on. We'll crank that down once we put the bolts in for the lower control arm. Alright, the lower control arm, once you get it positioned in the grooves, has a cam bolt. So it's got flat on one side, and then cam washers go on either end so that the control arms can be adjusted to get a better front end alignment. I need to turn it. Just needed to twist it. Oh, good. Put your alright, so in there. I'm just gonna crank it down. Now it's just tightening everything up. I made sure to keep the cam washers centered because I don't want to do anything to the alignment that's going to have to be done at a shop on a machine. So there you have it. Let's crank down the rest of these and we'll move on to the other side. Okay. Now that we've got both, get on there, you can freaking see me. Now that we got both of the control arm drop brackets installed. Alright, so the spring has just dropped right out. I think the video might have got messed up when I did it. But I lowered the axle down, the spring just came right out. Just make sure that there's a boot up inside of here that has to sit in there. That's where the spring seats against, so it's not metal on metal. So that stayed up in there. So now we need to drill out the area for the bump stops. We're gonna do a 3/8 inch drill bit, and we're gonna drill it right in the center of this seat right here. And we're going to install these bump stops right here. So that's the next step. Alright, so okay, using a center punch, you want to hit as close to the middle of the seat as you can. So I have a spring activated center punch. I mean, it doesn't matter what you have. Just punch a hole. Mark a hole so that it's easier to drill. Easy day. Comes with a bolt, a nut, and a washer for each side. Doesn't matter which way they go. That's it. So now that you know it's centered, it's all good. Now we can get the spring, because we want to put this inside the spring before we mount it to there. Oh, that's just going to be a pain to try to get the spring over the top of it. This side here, that in there, and there you have it. And I just need to get a wrench and a socket and tighten up the bump stop. Alright, so it's a 14mm wrench and socket. If your socket won't fit in there, you can put a wrench on top as well. You know, whatever you want to, however you want to do it. You just need to tighten it down. So I am going to use a 14mm ratchet wrench on bottom, and just a regular wrench on top. So I decided to change it up. I went with a ratchet underneath, 14mm, and a wrench on top. Seems to be working a little bit easier. Just the wrench wasn't angled enough. The socket will go up inside of there. So. Alright. So the bump stop is tight, and we can go over and do the other side. Alright, so now we got the coil springs in over the top of the bump stops we just installed. The next step is we're going to put a new drop Pitman on to keep the steering geometry relatively the same. So it's got this fancy little sticker that just came off. So here's your Pitman arm, your drop Pitman arm, normal pitman arm is just straight. I'll show you.
So that is your standard pitman arm. You can see that the one I'm putting in has got a significant drop to it. This stock one has a drop, just not as significant as the one I have in my hand. So that's what we'll be changing out next. Just removing the drag link end from there, and then getting a pitman arm remover, which I have, and removing that bolt out of the steering, from the steering sector shaft. Drop it down, put the new one in. Pretty simple. To loosen the drag link, you need a 7mm Allen hex head wrench. Allen wrench, hex head, called all kinds of different. So that's what you need. You need a 7mm. What that does is it goes in the top of the stud to hold it from spinning inside. Because we're not changing the drag link end. We want to maintain its integrity. You need a 7mm on top to hold it while you use a 21mm wrench to turn the nut. It's turning pretty good so far. If it comes to a point where it starts to turn, and I've got the Allen wrench ready. Alright, it came off easy. Didn't need the Allen wrench, but may need it to put it back on, so just be aware of that. That you need that 7mm Allen to secure it if need be. Sometimes these will just pop right out. You can also help it along with a tap on the pitman arm, by a light tap on the pitman arm with a hammer. Sometimes helps it along as well. But, you can also use a tie rod tool, a tie rod end remover, which that's what this is. Very similar to the pitman arm puller, just the pitman arm puller is much bigger. So if I can get this up in there, which I can get it on there, but I won't be able to turn it with a wrench. So let's tap it one time and see if it'll pop off. Alright, so tapping it didn't work. So I was able to get my remover up in there. Now I just got to try to manipulate a wrench to turn it. So, okay, so we got the drag link off. Now I'm about to take the 1 5/16. I'll figure out what the millimeter version is later. Bolt off the pitman arm. Easy enough. Pitman arm puller on. Get it on there. Okay, now that's a 19mm. Get this in there. It'll be much quicker. Easy peasy, come on now. Alright, so that's the pitman arm off. Now it's just as simple as It has flats. There's 4 flats. Put it on the right way, and then right back up in where it was. The new Pitman arm on. The nut and bolt back on. Crank it up so it's tight. Supposed to be a 33mm socket. Put it back up in, but I didn't have a 33 handy, so but I had a 1 5/16, so. Cranking this down, putting the drag link back on, and carrying on with the rest. Your Pitman arm back on, and we'll put the drag link back up in there. And this is probably going to be when we need the 7mm to hold it so it doesn't turn. And then that 21mm, crank it down. Alright, that's good and tight. That's the new drop Pitman arm installed. Okay, so next is going to be removing the shocks. So that's pretty simple and straightforward. Alright, take the shock off. It's a 16, and now Jeep has put a nut down here on the bottom so that you can hold it while you turn the top nut, which makes things so much simpler. So that's just taking the nut off, putting the new shock on. Pretty easy. Although I've got it loose enough, I can just hand turn it off of here. Try not to drop the nut. And you also have hardware on top that you need to take out because you'll be replacing that, the bushing and the washer. Alright, the new shock comes with hardware, so you just have to put it together, compress the shock to take the sleeve off, and it's going to spring up because it's a nitrogen filled shock. Open this up. Cup down, upraised portion facing up, and then I'm going to slide it through the hole, and then we're going to put the rubber down with the upraised portion down because there's a hole that those two will slide into, and then a cup over the top of it with a nut. Alright, I just pushed it up and set it on the nut and bolt that I'm going to mount the bottom to, so that it holds it in place so I can get this rubber bushing in there. Get that seated in the hole. Put the cup down, and then put the nut on top, and we should be good. Although rough country isn't as they aren't as up to date as Jeep is, so actually going to have to get a small wrench. So we got to revert back. Gotta get a small wrench, and it's a 15 millimeter. It was 16 to take it off, the 15 to put their nut back on, and then we're gonna have to get a small, probably 6 or 7 millimeter, maybe 8 wrench to hold the top of this, so we can crank this down until crank the nut down until these bushings bulge, and then it should be set. We'll see if we need to hold the top of it or not. I don't know if I will or not. We'll find out in just a second. I don't see the rod turning, so I think we're going to be good to go. Watch for that rubber to start bulging, and we'll be good to go. I think we're good. Alright, so now I'll show you what I mean by bulging. So you can see that it's kind of bulging out the end right here. Good to go. I'll go do the other side. Okay, the lower stock bolt is pretty simple. I just need to remove it from where I put the old bolt back in, and then just let it slide in. Easy. Kind of just puts itself back in. 18. Gun it back on. Those will get torqued down later to 80 foot-pounds. And we'll put the shock on the other side. Okay, the instructions call to take the steering stabilizer off on the axle side, so that's what I'm doing right now. It's 18 millimeter, not a big drama. We have the steering stabilizer shock off, and we're going to mount the new track bar bracket right here, just like this. So, new bolt, 4 other bolts will hold this in the crush sleeve. I will hold this new track bar bracket onto the axle. Okay, so we're going to put a crush sleeve right in between here. I'm going to use the stock hardware, which I saved. I'm going to mount this through the hole where the factory track bar was mounted. So the factory track bar mount is now going to secure the new bracket. Alright, we're not going to tighten that up just yet. I'm going to put the U-bolt around the axle and put the bolts in here, which they're 14 millimeter bolts. One on top, one on the bottom. Top one. Get that bottom on. Tighten them up. Got the U-bolts on, and now we can put some additional nuts and bolts on. To hold this secure. Everything cooperates in the end. It doesn't want to, but it has to. And we need to drill a 3/8 inch hole right there for another one. Alright, so since you really didn't need to watch me drill a hole, I drilled it. It's all good. Alright. There's that. Okay. Now we'll just need to tighten everything down. Put the track bar right in there. And we're good to go. Got a brand new big old bolt to put in there. We'll be good. Okay, so let's recap. What we've done is we added a track bar raised bracket. The steering stabilizer is now attached to the track bar raised bracket by a supplied bracket right here. And it's tight and everything's tight. All of the bolts are tight. The track bar or the stabilizer has been adjusted. I ran it all the way to one side, made sure we had shock, ran it all the way to the other side, made sure we had shock, tightened it all back down, all good to go. So that's all complete. Now the last step is putting the track bar right here on the new bracket. Then we can put the sway links in, drop brake line brackets, and we can move to the back. So let's get that track bar bolt in there. Got it in, got it lined up. I just used a little punch, stuck it in the hole, moved it. It was easy enough to slide in. And we just stick the new bolt in and tighten it down. Easy day. Oh, we are tight. Okay. So that's that. So next we are going to install the sway bar links. Here to here. Sway bar links. They kind enough to give them to you with the sleeves right here not installed. Take them over to your vise, stick one end in, and just push it in. That's all. All you have to do is push these in. You can use a pair of channel locks as well. I just use my vise. So we don't need any of the hardware, the factory hardware. They have four supplied bolts, which are 19 millimeter. So we're going to just use those. That'll be so much easier, so much funner. So this is probably the easiest part of the job. Because literally that's it. 2 bolts, 4 washers, 2 nuts. There you have it. Link installed. That's the sway of links in. Let's go do the other side. Alright, so next we are going to be putting a drop brake line bracket on, and all that is this. Bolt it into the factory position and then bolt it up there. It's two bolts. So let me do that. I'll be right back. The factory bracket is a 10 millimeter. Of course, the supplied hardware is 12 millimeter, so beware of that. This is also a clip that holds your ABS line to the brake bracket, and that's no longer going to be long enough, or going to be used because it's not long enough. So I'm going to take that off, toss it over there, and then you've got to carefully bend the line down so that it reaches the bottom of the bracket, and then you just put the bolt in and carry on. So I'm gonna do that. You see how the line is bent? It was at a 90, now it's bent. That's the way it has to be. Just be careful and bend it slowly as you pull it down. Okay, so got it all secured, all good to go. This is actually 11 millimeter nut and bolt. Factory is a 10. Supplied is a 11 millimeter. I said 12. I thought it was a 12, but it's 11. So that's all done, all good. This whole side is complete. So we should be good to go now. Move over to the other side, put the extended brake bracket on, and head to the back. We're at the back. We're going to be loosening the control arms. We'll be taking the shocks off. We're going to be taking the track bar off the axle side because we're going to be putting a raised track bar bracket on, and then pull the springs, put some bump stops in, and that's it. Job done. Should be pretty easy. Let's get to it. Track bar loose. Say secured out of the way. Yeah, it's out of the way. It's out of the way enough. Shocks are 18 millimeters. Track bar bolt, it was 21 millimeter. Bottom of the shock, but you need a long extension to get up there. So I have one. All right, for some reason my 15 didn't fit, so the 16 does. Wonder what that means. That means the instructions were wrong. Shock down, bolt back up in there. So much easier to put the shock up in there with one. Shock done. Stop this brake line. Loosen this and I'm going to drop the axle to get the springs out. We're not going to damage the brake line. And I can also pop these ABS lines out. They're just held in by little clips. Fancy dancy little tool there. We'll pull that out. All good. Well, that's disconnected. Lower control arm. And then we'll move to the other side. Alright, so we got the lower control arm loose, we got the track bar loose, we've got the brake line loose, we've got the shock off, and we should be able to lower it down and get that spring out. Let's do that. There it is. Let's go over and do the other side, and then we'll come back over here and pop the springs out and do this work. There's one more thing that I do that some people may not do. I disconnect the brake lines as well. So I went over to the other side, I disconnected the brake line here, took the shock off, and popped the ABS lines, and then disconnected the emergency brake. So that way it'll just droop as much as it can in the current configuration. So we should be good to go to drop it down, get these springs out. Again, this rubber cup needs to go back up inside because that's where the spring will sit. So it's not metal on metal. Springs are out. Now we can get the new springs in, which should be fun because of course they're taller. But before we do that, we have spring correction plates. And what those do is they just sit over top of this. That's it. This larger end goes to the back, so it sits just like this, so that it kicks the spring back up so that it sits more parallel instead of having a bow if you lift it and the spring's not got the right geometry. So the 19 to hold the back of it with the 18 nut. So raise this up so there's not too much pressure on it. Yeah. Better. Alright, so get this back in. So we got the rubber bushing. It's on the way it's supposed to. And there we go. Easy peasy. Crank this back up. So it's seated in there where it's supposed to be. turn this a little bit. There we go. Alright. So there's the spring in. So next we're going to put the track bar bracket in. That's this. I know you can't see very well. A little better of an angle anyway. Put this track bar in. Okay, so I've got to get in here and make a hole. I had to drill a hole on top of here for another bolt for secure it. So get the drill and drill a 13 something. 13/32 hole. Alright, so we're good. Got the hole drilled. I'm just putting this bad boy on. It's got three bolts, 2 here, 1 back there, and the big one in the middle. This goes up here. Alright, let's watch it struggle. Screw it. Stuff. Alright. There you go. That's all tight. This has just become way too much fun. So I can look at that. Alright, so that's secure. Okay, so I got a bolt and a nut with a sleeve. I got to slide up in here. When I crank it down, obviously, you know, crush it. So that's the next step. These bolts are, again, just tightening up shit. Almost done. These braces and brackets and stuff that get added, they always take the longest. The other side, be quick. Alright, I just need to crank it down. Just needed to lift up the axle, a little axle manipulation, all good. While I was bored, I put the bump stops in on this side. The only thing left on this side now is shock, reattach the sway bar link, and drop the bracket on the brake line. Once we do that, we will be set. Alright. Track bar on. Alright. So the rest of this stuff is pretty easy. I've already done this in the front. So all this is securing this bracket to here. With the factory equipment. Alright. Get our 11s. 11 socket, 11 wrench. Nothing bolt through there, and this one will be done. Put that shock on, remount the sway bar link, and it'll be golden. Alright, so there's that. So this control arm bolt back through here. There's one. Let's do a shot. Alright. Shocks are always fun. Always fun. 16. Number one bolt is already up there. Funny. Too funny. That goes up there. Duh. That's ever easy. Why isn't anything ever easy? It's all supposed to be easy. In there. There's so much stuff around here. I'm trying not to get hit the face with extraneous dirt at the same time. Alright. And I like doing this. That's the problem. I don't like it when I get hurt, but and this Jeep did draw some blood today, which is funny because it's a nurse's Jeep. I guess the Jeep is a phlebotomist today. She's not, but the Jeep is. Alright. Lock it on. Tighten up these bump stops. Bump stop tightened, brake line done, shock done, track bar done, spring in, attach this, and the control arm. We can get the other side done and be finished. Jack this baby up. Okay, race fan, there you have it. Sway link tight, control arm tight. Track bar tight. Head of the bolt facing the correct way not to hit the spring. All secure. All good. Bump stop in place, spring done. That's it. Move over to the other side. Do the exact same thing on the other side, and we're done. Alright. I'm not going to video that. You guys can have a nice time doing that. Just refer to this side. All good.